We're deep diving into one of the most pressing issues facing the United States of America right now, the southern border crisis. And we've got some shocking new details that are, I mean, frankly, mind-blowing. As Jim Ferguson exposed, they're actually United Nations trained army soldiers being paid and delivered by the United Nations.
There's something not right. This isn't just refugees coming in. These aren't people fleeing from some kind of war zone. These are predominantly men aged between 25 and 35, young fighting age men, as my old boss Nigel Farage once referred to them, and I think he's right. John, what do you think's going on here, mate?
So I can tell you these are UN soldiers, and they will be deployed by the WHO when they announce the next pandemic lockdown. That's what's going to happen. They've been trained by British soldiers. They've been trained by the Black Watch Regiment. They were training them in Antalya in Turkey and in the east of Ukraine. They're predominantly down to sergeant ranks. They're then shipped to France. They all sign the Official Secrets Act. Then they're ferried over. If you were fleeing war and tyranny, I don't know about you, but I would certainly take my wife and children with me. They're most precious. They're my prized asset. You know, they're everything to me. If you're going to war, you go to war with the lads. They're going to be deployed. They will be deployed.
John, I mean, you say you've spoken to people in the Black Watch. I mean, the Black Watch, a very famous, regiment.
Yes.
Are they actually going along with this?
They've got no choice. Well, I kind of said, why are you doing it? And he said, soldiers follow orders.
The federal government seems to be complicit in a massive criminal operation, deliberately flooding the country with unvetted, illegal foreigners, distributing them all over the United States. It's a full-on operation. Well, does the United Nations have a secret army of illegal immigrants already embedded in America for a hostile takeover, giving them cell phones, giving them homes, giving them financial monthly payments to live? One piece of this appears to be election fraud, right? But as journalist Greg Reese points out, it's actually much worse than that, because what's happening in the United States is not an isolated incident. It's happening all across Europe. Europeans are waking up to this fact.
What you're going to see is the following. We'll have a minister somewhere in cabinets suddenly come up with a great idea on how we're going to get these guys to contribute to help us. And they're going to put them in uniforms. So a couple of people have told me these uniforms are burgundy. Others have told me they're UN blue. I really don't know. I guess we'll see when they deploy them. They are going to be deployed, because otherwise, if they announced another lockdown, what would everyone say? They'd say bollocks, and they'd go about their business, wouldn't they? They're going to need armed young men in uniform to try and enforce it.
An overwhelming number of Europeans say illegal immigration is destroying their country. Take a look at these new numbers. New survey, 7 in 10 Europeans believe that their country is accepting too many migrants. Look at that. Greece, 90% of citizens say yes. Cyprus, no, I mean, they're all over like 70%. All of them saying way too many migrants. Interesting. I think if you go down the list, if you go even further down the list, you'll see like Portugal, you'll see some other countries in there, like 50%, but like almost overwhelmingly 70% at the average there. We now have new evidence this is all part of a George Soros and United Nations plan called Population Division. Now, the Population Division of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, as the United Nations writes, conducts demographic research, supports intergovernmental processes at the United Nations in the area of population and development, and assists countries in developing their capacity to produce and analyze population data and information. So it's a solution they propose for dealing with declining and aging populations, which most of the West is dealing with right now. I mean, look at Japan. Well, it's East, but Western-aligned countries, I should say. So back in 2015, George Soros published his plan, which has now been implemented across the globe to bring millions of illegals into the United States and into Europe. As Hungary's leader, Viktor Orban, recently pointed out, Soros did this by buying off members of parliaments in country after country after country. This wasn't done by happenstance. When George Soros would buy them off, they would then align with his policies for mass illegal migration into those countries. Listen to Victor.
I do remember how Mr. George Soros published his plan in English in the Project Syndicate publication. It was done 2015, September 26. And he published a plan. He said that I'm quoting, here are the 6 components of my comprehensive plan. I just quote 2 or 3 points of that. First is, he said very clearly, 2015, that, quoting again, EU has to accept at least 1 million asylum seekers annually. That was the first point. Second, he said, adequate financing is critical. And he proposed to issue long-term euro bonds for financing the migration crisis and the migrants' social and welfare taking care when they arrive to the European Union. And another point which is very important for Hungary, which is involving the territory of Hungary directly into this program, he said that, quoting them, safe channels must be established for asylum seekers, starting with getting them from Greece and Italy to their destination countries, which means to bring them to Greece, to Hungary, and then have them to go to Austria. So don't forget that what we are speaking about is not an accidental stories, not a bulk of 10 years of accidental stories. It's a plan which is going on. It was written, it was published, it's known. So we are fighting again an organized gang called Empire of George Soros, NGOs, who are just supporting everybody who is transgressing our legal system and our regulation, and financing illegal activity against our nation. So this is why the story is not just about migration, but it's about how this European Union is working and how George Soros was able to captive the main positions inside many institutions of European Union, buying out MPs and other leaders, and in order to execute the plan which is written, and it's against all the Christian and nation-based political forces. It's against us. It's about how to change Europe and how to eliminate and push aside all the Christian, conservative, national-based political leaders and voters from the European Union decision-making bodies. So this is the migration about.
Viktor Orban. That's why they don't like him.
I am here at an undisclosed location in Hagerstown, Maryland, that a convoy of UN armored vehicles and an entire unit is here. I have excellent drone footage that will show you that entire unit. What I have behind me and what you can see are these shipping containers that say UN. They're white shipping containers that say UN. If you take a look behind me just a little bit, let's see if we can focus this.
Biden has let in now estimates of 30 million illegal immigrants into the United States in these few years. And these people are inside the United States. I mean, they're flooding the country with unvetted foreigners, distributing all over the country, even providing them homes, financial support. Some say it's about election fraud, but it goes much deeper than that. It's a much bigger plan, and the United Nations is absolutely complicit in it. Todd Bensman, in a 2022 interview, had this U.S.-bound Haitian in Mexico. He interviewed him, where he complains that the United States failed to make its payment on his UN credit card that he was given.
It's one more money, so, and they haven't deposited my account. ¿Cuánto le depositaban? Él deposita el 7 de enero a 14 de enero, pero no deposita nada. So the whole month of January you haven't received anything.
What were they supposed to receive in there?
¿Cuánto es lo que te dan? Es el último pago. ¿Cuánto fue? De 4. El dinero, 3,600 pesos.
3,600 pesos was the last payment I received. And it goes. Does that go into your bank account?
¿A dónde va? ¿Tienes una cuenta? ¿Una tarjeta? Sí. ¿Tienes?
Oh, let me see. And how much is anything on that card now at all? Any money?
¿Dinero? No, no hay dinero. No hay? No hay nada. No depositan nada.
Here, take a closer look at that UN bank card, the United Nations bank card. Unbelievable. Now, if you need any more evidence of this, just look at Gaza. This might be a hard pill for some people to swallow, but the United Nations has been captured on video footage, coordinating with Hamas soldiers. So these are UN vehicles at UN headquarters. Drone recently captured footage of Hamas with these UN personnel support transporting themselves in UN vehicles. And they're using United Nations buildings for the sake of hiding and staging attacks against Israel. Hamas, of course, was created by Israel, as Netanyahu openly has admitted. That's well established now. And they're armed by the United States. That's well established. So they pretend that they don't know what they're up to. It's a total lie. 2.4 million Palestinians are now being moved out of Gaza, being told to funnel into the center so they can be put on a UN-backed pier that's being built, that they'll be shipped out of Palestinian territory, and they'll be distributed all over the United States and all throughout Europe. Of course, they will not live in Gaza really ever again. That's the plan. That's the United Nations plan. That's exactly what Israel and the United States wants, and that's the distribution plan into the United States, so that, of course, Israel can take the oil and take the land, build a modern-day Dubai in Gaza, as we have well established. And the U.S. has already openly said this. The Biden administration has laid out this plan to have Palestinians moved to Western countries like the United States. So you need the United Nations to work hand in hand with Hamas to stir things up. That's how this works.
Why do they import young men from the East? Because traditionally, if you want to kill and tyrannize white people, you put black soldiers in, because there's a cultural disassociation. And that's their method. That's the way these globalists are going to do it.
You know,
once people of all colours come together and recognise their common enemy, we'll walk over these people in 10 minutes.
In a lot of black population in Chicago, literally ready to go to war with this invading army of these individuals from Africa and that are coming in. And it's unbelievable, the bloodshed that's unfolding right now, and no one will talk about it.
Emotional outbursts, at times so heated, police had to step in. We're talking about city council today and a vote to spend $51 million on helping migrants here in Chicago.
The migrant crisis is being felt far from the border, including cities like Chicago, where officials say resources are running thin.
Tonight, officials warning Chicago is approaching a breaking point. Tents full of desperate migrants lining Chicago's iconic Lakeshore Drive. Migrant shelters inside O'Hare Airport. A total of 17,000 migrants showing up since last August, and officials expect 1,200 per day to keep coming.
Now Chicago is building sprawling tent camps to get migrants off the streets of places like this ahead of the cold winter months.
Democratic Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker slamming President Biden for not doing enough, writing, "The federal government's lack of intervention and coordination at the border has created an untenable situation for Illinois." The White House blaming Congress for not acting and saying they've accelerated work permits and provided $1 billion to cities nationwide.
I don't want them there.
But protests here are growing.
To have the government come in and dump 300 people right next door to me, it is not fair.
The Latino Pilsen neighborhood was the first to build a shelter for migrants, and they're now preparing a new shelter to take up to 1,000 more. Community leaders tell us they want to help migrants, but they're worried about resources for poor Chicagoans, too.
I'm concerned because of the slow response by the federal and state government.
When winter comes, not only will you not have enough room for migrants, you also might not have enough room to take in some homeless people who live on the streets here in Pilsen, American citizens.
Absolutely.
We met these migrants sleeping outside a police station. Stephanie tells us she boarded a free bus in Texas because she thought Chicago had a refugee camp. Some of us have been here weeks, she said. She told us she's desperate for a job to support her 1-year-old son back in Venezuela.
The Texas governor says he will continue busing migrants to sanctuary cities to relieve border towns. Tonight, a DHS assessment team is here in the city.
This is America.
This is America.
There's a problem.
And the people have a problem with Trump. Are you crazy?
Biden did this. This is not Trump.
Exactly. The Democrat Party in this city hates poor black people. And I'm talking about all of the Democrat Party, the Black Caucus and everybody else. This is a fact. They have starved the people.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
Because I've been in politics for the last 25 years. Ran for city council twice. They have no intentions for American citizens, especially black America. Poor black people in this city are obsolete.
That gentleman that you showed, Mark Clayton, is an activist. Mark Carter, excuse me, is an activist in Chicago. He took me down to the South Side. I had to be escorted down there because of the gang violence and all of the issues. But their local government has poured over $3 billion into their community for illegal aliens, not their community, but for illegal aliens. And they are being systematically pushed out of their communities like Inglewood. It is something I have never witnessed before. I feel like I'm traveled, I'm smart, I've been places. I'm telling you, when you go down to the South Side, it is desolate, it is desperate, hopeless, violent. I would say 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 houses are dilapidated and shuttered. The other 4 need to be shuttered. Businesses are closed and shuttered. There's no industry. They are bringing illegal aliens, from majority from Venezuela, and they are moving them out of their communities. Let me give you an example. The city of Chicago paid black residents that were living in these dilapidated shacks, if you will, $1,000 to move out. Well, why would the landlords in Chicago want them to move out? $1,000. Because each illegal alien has $9,000 attached to them for rent assistance. $9,000. So they're moving them out and moving them in. Now, Clayton, I talked to mega church black pastors, street pastors, violent gang members that have come out of prison that are trying to reform their community, been in prison for murder for 21 years, another one murder for 26 years, and soup kitchen workers, everyone in between down on the south side of Chicago, black residents, black Americans. And they all say to me, to a man and woman, they say, we're going to war. And it took me back for a second, and I was like, okay, well, let's clarify what war is. And they said, whatever we have to do to maintain and protect our community. And a black pastor, the rooftop pastor, the AK rooftop pastor that Tucker Carlson interviewed.
I'm going to show you that race is not the biggest problem that we face in the United States of America. The glue holding our society is definitely weakening.
Pastor Corey Brooks of Project Hood.
Pastor Brooks told me, we are within one black teenager being raped by these Venezuelan gangs or gangs killing a black gang member or vice versa, and Chicago is going to explode. Everyone knows it, and isn't it coincidental, which I don't believe in coincidences, last week, DNC comes out and says, well, we're really kind of rethinking the Chicago DNC convention. We might do it remote. They know it as well as I do, that this is a powder keg ready to explode.
You're right. This is an absolute powder keg moment. And I think, we throw this term war around a lot. And I've thought a lot about this since you and I have been talking over the past few days. This idea, I've thought it was going to be a civil war. We've been thinking of the term civil war in the United States, Americans against Americans right now. But I think it's not. I think what you saw in Chicago, what you're seeing with your documentary Treason, what you're uncovering, is an invasion, and it's a repelling of an invasion. That will be the war. Americans coming together, and they hate that. I mean, absolutely, the powers that be would hate that Republicans and Democrats, MAGA Americans, and liberal Democrats would come together and say, enough is enough. We want to take our country back. And maybe I'm wrong, but is that where you see this war unfolding, or how this war would unfold? It won't be a civil war. It'll be a repelling of this invasion as a war.
I absolutely believe that, and my mindset is changing as I'm going to these communities, and I'm going to Boston and New York next. But I knew Chicago was the epicenter. And you're right. What scares the power structures more than anything, Clayton, is a big white man standing next to a big black man, both alpha males, one in law enforcement, one in the prison system, and realizing we have enormous amounts in common. We agree on the majority of everything. And the things that we don't agree on, we can civilly talk and come to a good conclusion because we're Americans. But when you take us and we're looking at the same problem and we're saying, The source of that problem is the government. The government is destroying you. Why would I not help my brother? I don't care what race he is or what religion. He's my American brother and sister. Why would I not help him? That's going to be the call to America, because as I say in my interviews, if you think it's going to be contained in this bubble in Chicago, you're a fool. It's already spread across America. There's 45 million illegal aliens in America right now. 45 million. I spoke to a female precinct leader in the GOP. There's only 2 GOP offices, I think, in all of Illinois. One of them is in Southside. And she tells me, she goes, do you think this is coincidental, JJ? You think this is just happenstance that the black population is decreasing in Chicago? They're about 700,000-ish. Do you think it has no meaning that the mayor, Johnson, 2 weeks ago said out loud, we're bringing in 700,000 illegal aliens? It's a 1-for-1. They're replacing us. And I didn't even use the word replacement. They all did. I'm talking from the highest level intellect down to street level knowledge and everyone in between. We are being replaced. We are being replaced. And I'm like, wow.
In America, when it was a colony of the United Kingdom, of Britain, there was a revolution against British colonial rule.
That's right.
And a lot of people didn't realize, but it was only 3% of those people in America that overthrew the British forces and basically got rid of them. 3% of the population, John.
I look forward to it. I'm ready. I can't wait, because I know it's going to be the beginning of the end for them. I do foresee victory. I see that at very great cost. But we will see it. And I think the world will become closer than ever when we do see victory. It's going to come on the back of a load of bloodshed. And unfortunately, it has to.